Hello, Little Woman fans. I thought it would be nice to end this season with a special fan fiction story. This one is actually written by me. It got some nice feedback on Archive of Our Own, which made me very proud. I don't often write fiction in English, so I was happy that the story came out the way I wanted to. This fanfic has Amy and Friedrich in it, having an in-depth discussion. It is not very common to see these two characters together in the adaptations or in the fan fiction world, so I like to give them like a brother-sister type of moment. The story takes place between Little Woman and Little Man. Jo is expecting their second child and Amy and Laurie are having problems getting pregnant, which are things that also happen in Little Woman books as well. I always thought that was an interesting thing to happen in the novel, that they had difficulty starting a family, and obviously this was before any kind of fertility treatments. I always thought Fritz would get along very well with everyone in the March family. When I published my story, people in the comments did discuss about the things that Amy and Friedrich have in common, like the love for cultural life and both are well-traveled. One of my favorite scenes in the Masterpiece Theater Little Woman series from 2017 is the moment in the end when Fritz has come to court Jo and Amy, and Jo are talking, and Amy says to Jo, Fritz is great. Everybody likes him and she is happy for Jo. I love that scene so much, so much. I hope you guys enjoy this lovely fanfic. If you wish to read some of my other Jo and Friedrich fanfics, you can find me from Archive of Our Own. My name is Little Woman Podcast there as well. Little Woman Podcast books are available on Amazon, Nook and Kindle. Huge thanks to all of you who have been listening and watching and sent me kind messages. It always makes my day when I get a message from another canon fan and then we just talk about Little Woman and how much we love it. I will see you on the next season with a bunch of awesome new guests. But don't go anywhere because before that I have weekly episodes of 8 Cousins coming up, and that is another wonderful Louisa May Alcott book classic. This is a Little Woman Podcast, Something to Believe in. Something to believe in. Bring, fetch. Friedrich, touristic, but the dog sat still, looking at him, almost like the dog was saying, Tell me, Professor, what is the purpose of this exercise? Hop, Friedrich said, and jumped up and down, feeling very silly, talking to a dog that didn't seem to care. Platz, he said, lying down on the ground and throwing leaves around him. You know, buddy, if you are going to live with us, you need to learn all these commands in 2 languages. Friedrich sighed, but the dog kept wiggling its tail and looked at him with his warm brown eyes, which kept turning whenever he threw another stick, but the dog didn't make any attempt to retrieve them. Was his loss? When Jo threw them, you picked every single one. Woof, the dog said, and licked his bearded face. You clearly like me, so there is hope, Friedrich said in his most calm and slightly amused teacher tone. It was early morning. The ground was crisp like it often was in late August. He and Jo had stayed up longer than they usually did and talked about their future plans. Friedrich was still feeling overwhelmed by Jo's news. He couldn't stop thinking about the excitement in Jo's eyes when she told him. Friedrich sighed once again. He was officially in love with the woods of Concord. Pines were as tall as the most modern houses in New York and in Berlin. Despite fond memories he had from both cities, this was where he belonged. God's earth, where the river sang and the trees talked with one another, forgotten language, and dogs did not fetch, or this dog was just playing tricks with him. Braver Hund, come! He decided to follow the path through the woods. Perhaps the dog would be more interested in chasing butterflies in the meadow. Woof, woof. Friedrich stopped. The dog had something in his mouth. He took it carefully to his hands. It was a delicate object, which was now covered in dog drool. How the Americans say, yuck. Look, it is an umbrella, a pink umbrella with lace, and it's broken. How very odd. The handle was cut in two, almost like someone had smashed it against a tree trunk and jumped on it violently or stepped over it with a high heel. Then he heard something ominous, sounds of crying. For a moment he remembered fairy tales from his childhood, German folk tales about ghosts that lived in the Black Forest of Bavaria. But this was no ghost. It was the sound of a woman who was very upset. Friedrich began to walk faster with the dog behind him. He arrived in a forest clearing and saw something that he had never seen before. It was not a banshee or a haunted spirit from Schwarzwald. Amy March was sitting underneath an old oak tree, her head buried in her hands, sobbing her heart out. For a moment Friedrich wanted to flee the scene. He had seen Jo crying many times. He didn't know another soul who would get so emotionally attached to every story they read that they cried for weeks if their favorite character got into an accident or died. But seeing Jo's sister crying, well, that was another matter. Friedrich, however, was not someone who could walk away when someone was troubled. "Amy, what is it? Are you hurt? Has Laurie already returned from Boston? Do you want me to fetch someone? Your mother? Meg? Jo?" Amy raised her face. Friedrich had never seen her like this. The Amy March he knew was always poised. She walked in her stylish clothes in the streets of Concord as naturally as she would if she lived in Paris, and spent her days prancing on the streets of Champs-Élysées. Her hair was always according to the latest fashion, and unlike his unabashed Jo, Amy didn't show her emotions as easily. Amy looked tired, as if she had forgotten to comb her hair in the morning. Half of her bun was torn, and yellow curls were all over her face. Her eyes were red, and her white lace gloves were thrown to the ground and were now filled with dirt stains. What would the high society thought of Miss Lawrence if they would see her in this state? She looked like a combination of a madwoman and a fairy. "Friedrich, I am all right. I just needed to be alone for a while," Amy said, wiping her face. "Laurie will be back tomorrow." "Is that dog yours? Where did it come from?" The curious dog had run to Amy and was licking her surprised face. "Nein, Platz. 'Tis hopeless, honestly. He doesn't do anything I tell him. Oh, give him time. You need to be firm. Think of him like he's a bad student. Dogs need authority, you know. What a good boy you are, aren't you?" Amy said in a much more cheered voice, taking the dog's face between her hands and tapping its forehead. "It is those puppy eyes. How can I say no to them? The dog is my nephew's. Old Fannigan gave the dog to Emil after he helped him to build new fishing shed. The boy is so fond of Jo that he asked her to name him. Guess what name your sister gave to him?" "Oh, let me think. Knowing Jo, it must be something outlandish or literal. Dante? Dumas? Oberon? I know, Don Quixote. All good guesses." Friedrich laughed. "Miss Lawrence, let me introduce you to Sir Christopher Columbus." "Oh, isn't that just like her?" she said. "Do you know, Friedrich, how she came up with that word? Mother was fed up with Jo saying damn and told her to come up with a word that wouldn't be that crude. She has been saying Christopher Columbus ever since." While Amy was chatting about her sister's odd vocabulary, Friedrich sat down next to her. "I guess you had an argument with your umbrella," he said, and gave her the pieces of the broken relic. "You want to talk about it?" "Oh, Friedrich, I am afraid there is no one who can understand my feelings right now. Even if I would not understand, sometimes it is good to talk. In fact, sometimes it is even better to talk with someone who is not too close to you." "You mean my sisters?" "Well, you are pretty much tied to the hip, yes. Even you and Jo, no matter what either you may say," Friedrich said when he saw Amy's look. "Fine, I tell you. But you have to promise me not to tell anyone, because I am not ready to talk about it." "I promise." "Laurie and I have been married for many years now, and we both want a family. We have been talking about it since the beginning, and a week ago I thought I was pregnant. You can imagine how happy I was. Laurie has been in Boston with his grandfather. I was going to surprise him when he comes back. The other day I went to see Dr. Campbell and—" Amy's voice broke down. "He said I wasn't pregnant. I had wanted it so badly that my body thought I was." Amy sobbed. Friedrich laid his hand on Amy's shoulder. Amy was so small he felt like a giant next to her. Images from last night came to Friedrich's mind. He was horrified. "Amy, I am so sorry. If Jo and I had known what was going on with you, we would have been a lot more discreet." The night before at the Sunday dinner at the March house, they had announced that they were going to have another baby. Everyone had been there. Well, almost everyone. Meg and John, his in-laws, Abigail and Robert, Demi and Daisy, Franz and Emil, but Amy had been there alone. And now that Friedrich thought about it, she had been sitting holding their little Rob in her lap the entire evening, holding his little curled baby hands in her white hands and making their little boy smile, with cutesy talk and kissing his rosy cheeks until they were covered with light pink lip salve. Friedrich thought of previous Sunday dinners. Amy always wanted to hold Rob in her lap for a moment, almost like she could conjure a little Rob or Roberta to herself with just her willpower. "Friedrich Bhaer, what kind of professor are you, not seeing what was going on?" he thought to himself. "I am very happy for you and Jo, Friedrich. I truly am," Amy said. "You are wonderful parents. It is just, sometimes when I see John twirling Daisy and Demi around in the garden, and you and Jo with Rob, I become upset. Jo used to say that I get things easily. There are things that I don't seem to ever get. You know, Amy, Jo would never tell this to you. She is too proud. But she has told me. Before we met, for years, she thought that she was going to be alone. Nobody would want to marry her, and she should bury all those dreams that she had about having a family. You and your sister have a lot more things in common than you know." "My poor Jo, she has always hated when people pity her. Good thing she has you now. We are all grateful for it." Amy paused and twirled the golden wedding band in her hands. Almost like he was reading her mind, Friedrich said with a low voice, "You are not a failure." "He never had a true family. I wanted to give him one. He has all of us, and he has you. You are his one true family." Amy looked at Friedrich. He smiled through his beard, and his dark eyes beamed. Amy always thought he looked older than he truly was. He was always kind to her and Laurie. She remembered a discussion she had with Jo just a few months before her sister's wedding. Amy had asked her about their age difference. Did Jo think it would cause problems between them? And Jo's answer managed to surprise her. "He's not young or old to me, almost like he grows and changes together with me, Amy. Isn't that strange? You know, when Beth died, I felt that I aged 50 years in a few months. It had such a big effect on me. Friedrich has been through similar cycles, more often than I have. That is why, my dear sister, he seems older to you than he truly is, because he had to mature early. Amy took Jo's hand into hers and said, I think he is perfect for you, and just the right age. Amy thought of all the cycles that had forced Friedrich to mature faster. Escaping the war in Germany and moving to another different culture and starting his life all over again, losing his sister and adopting his nephews and suddenly becoming a parent. What else was there? Can I tell you a secret, Amy? Of course you may. I did not know mein Vater very well. I was a young boy when he left. He left my mother and my sister and me. He exchanged us for another life. Already then I swore if I ever have children of my own, I never abandon them. I will be the best father in God's kingdom. How old you were? 10. Only 10? Yes, Minna was just a little girl and Mutti. She almost gave up living when it happened. I felt that it was my duty to take care of them. I started working almost the same time that I attended school. To my fortune, my teachers were patient with me and understood my situation. Their support might be the reason why I wanted to become a teacher. This person, my father that was absent from my life, had an enormous effect in the end. Weren't you angry at him? I was very angry, but my anger did not bring him back. My fate helped me a lot, but it did leave an empty place in my heart, fear of being rejected and left out. You, Friedrich, you always seem to get along with everyone so well. I guess we all have things inside us that drive us forward. I always wanted a family, and to be a father, and for many years I thought it was something I would never be able to have. Amy was quiet. She thought of the dark moments when she would wake up at night from restless dreams. She had been comparing herself to Meg and Jo for so long. She and Laurie had been married for years, yet both of her sisters had become pregnant a year after being married. Amy had forgotten that there was someone in her family who had almost lost their hope of becoming a parent, the same way as she had her brother-in-law. This observation was both peculiar and comforting. Years passed. My friends married, got stable jobs, bought homes and settled down. Maybe I was afraid that if I would settle down with someone, it wouldn't last. It didn't last with my parents. 10 years go by, 20 years, and every year I lose more hope of ever finding love or starting a family of my own. Sounds like you were protecting yourself from a heartbreak. You are probably right. And then Minna got sick, and suddenly I was a single parent in a foreign country of 2 very lively young boys. I loved them very much, but in the marital market it made me a rather undesirable husband candidate, as you can imagine. Not to mention the working prospects as an immigrant. And then you met my sister who loves young orphan boys, Amy said, smiling. Yes, I could not have imagined in my wildest dreams that I would end up on the other side of the world, married and becoming a father. Amy, you cannot force things to happen. You have to trust that life holds you. Sometimes it can take a lifetime to get what you have always wanted. Laurie worships you. Talk to him when he comes back. Tell him what happened. He will understand. Are you feeling any better? Amy smiled. Good. Let's take you home. They walked the path back to the river and the bridge, sister and the brother-in-law, Christopher Columbus behind them with its tail wiggling, because he was a happy-natured dog who liked these people very much. Have you thought of baby names yet? Elizabeth or Minna if it is a girl. Jo suggested Dickens if it is a boy, but I told her to hold back with author names because if she doesn't like some of the future books, she might regret naming our son after them. Have you ever thought of Theodore? Amy asked. She was in a much better mood now, making a floweret out of daisies she picked on their way back. We can put it on the list, Friedrich said, and he thought of all the Theodores and Friedrichs in the world who grew up without parents, and ladies who wanted to become mothers, but weren't given a chance. You know, Amy, I am glad I ran into you. Jo and I would like you and Laurie to become godparents. Oh, Friedrich, that would be lovely. After her chat with Friedrich, Amy felt like a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. It was still bittersweet, but she had more strength to go on, and Friedrich was right. There were things in this world that cannot be forced. They can only come with love and forbearance. The end. Thank you for listening. Take care and make good choices. Bye.